Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. It's good to be here and back for day 3 of the Dare to Thrive challenge. And day 3 is called Your Heart is Your Superpower, or Your Heart is Your Strength, Not Your Weakness. So it's all about how we can use our heart-centered practice as a superpower, and how that can help us to move out of survival mode. And that can feel counterintuitive. So I just want to offer you this, because I think it's fundamental for people who work in helping professions in care of any sort. So do let me know if you're here, and post hello in the comments. It's always good to know. Hello, Henry, I can see you're here. Great to see you. It's good to know that I have people here with me and that I'm talking to people. So if you're around, we can go on to Zoom briefly after the session so that we can actually have a conversation. I really would like to connect with you, just to sort of finish off what I'm going to talk through today. So this is all about using your superpower. And I'd like to return to, I think, something that I said on day 1, which is that you, as a heart-centered practitioner, you are enough. You are enough right here, right now. And I want to share that our skills and attributes as facilitators who are committed to enabling others, who are heart-centered, those skills and attributes are the very qualities that can support us to thrive and even move us out of survival mode. So what you potentially do at your best, presence, connection, compassion, care, is the antidote to stress, anxiety, not being enough, damage, and worrying about becoming broken. And there's a growing amount of research that is supporting that idea. So it's not just coming out off the top of my head. So as a heart-centered practitioner, you have natural strengths, and what I'm suggesting is that about moving towards those capacities rather than away. So I want you to hold that idea of moving towards, not away. And to start with, I'd love you to just see if you could hold in your mind an experience that you've had, or maybe 2 experiences, where you felt a strong empathetic reaction, a reaction. So you actually felt very strongly about an encounter that you had with someone else, and you had your own reaction to it, and maybe you got a bit hooked in and a bit upset about it. So if you can kind of think, you might not be able to think of it off the top of your head, but maybe you have something in your mind. And so I'd love you to sort of think about that. And then also, if you can ever think of a situation where you felt compassion and you didn't have that kind of strong reaction, but you felt compassion instead. And what I'd like us to do is to really start to tune into some of the differences of what's going on when we feel that very strong empathetic reaction, and when we feel compassion, we feel for someone, but we're moving towards compassion. So just really love to reflect, and that's going to look differently for different people. So I'd love you to sort of reflect on that. And if you do have something that comes to mind, pop it in the chat now if you feel okay about doing that. So the other thing that I'd like to share with you is a quote by someone called Sydney Banks, who's been incredibly influential on me in terms of how I now understand my human experience. And he said that if the only thing people learned was to not be afraid of their experience, that could change the world. If the only thing that people learned was not to be afraid of their experience, that could change the world. And I think it's a really, really interesting, provocative statement that really could change whole worlds if people weren't driven by fear. So that kind of sits underneath the challenge, I guess, and the courage required for a compassionate response. So who are heart-centered practitioners? Let me just check in the comments to see if I can. So hi Terry, hi Henry, good. Let me know if you're here and you're watching. So how would you define a heart-centered practitioner? So just really briefly, I have written a brief blog on this if you want to go on my website and have a look. And I think I'm going to write part 2 drawing on this. So So for me, a heart-centered practitioner is someone who's driven by a strong sense of purpose and committed to care and doing work that is about supporting other people in their own transformation. So there's a strong sense of purpose behind their work that involves something bigger than them, that is working towards supporting other people. I think that heart-centered practitioners are often very in tune with their emotions and their feelings, and they instinctively know that that quality that they bring and that quality of vulnerability is a really important part of the work that they can do with other people. They might be, not necessarily, but they might identify themselves as being particularly sensitive and are often very touched by their emotions. But because maybe they're sensitive and they are often emotionally affected by things, they may fear that the experience that they have might damage them in some way. So someone who is really, and often that kind of conflict between how I want to show up and then what I'm frightened of can create a dissonance, and that can create stress. So it's a lot of the work that I do is about really helping people to kind of make peace with those dissonance and those kind of contradictions that they're sitting with. So maybe a heart-centered practitioner's internalizes an idea that being heart-centered isn't a good thing. Maybe they've got beliefs and messages that they picked up when they were growing up about that. So they maybe feel they need to withhold and not be so soft. So what I'm suggesting here is that your superpower, the very thing that you are good at, and that is human connection, and creating transformative conditions for people, will support you to stay safe. And the key thing I want to say that's key here is the idea of being a conscious facilitator. So the one thing that will get in the way, and particularly so if you are heart-centered, is fear and being lost and getting caught up and lost in your own story, your own drama. And I'll expand on the getting lost in your drama tomorrow, but it's also relevant today. So that's the one thing that will get in the way, and we'll talk about that a bit in a minute. So I just wanted to share with you these, I think I can just add to stream. Yes, there we go. 6 pillars that I kind of came up with. This is just in draft form. I came up with it when I was thinking about these sessions. Oh, I seem to have things coming up on my screen as well. So 6 pillars of a heart-centered facilitation practice. And so the first one, and as you can see, it very neatly chimed with the word thrive. So the first one is the idea that thought creates reality, or a reality. So thought creates our experience of life, and so we experience our reality through our thought, and so this idea that what I am experiencing is my experience, and what you're experiencing is your experience. And it's really important to hold on to that idea that although we have this amazing capacity of empathy and connection and sensing, we're all experiencing different realities. And that's absolutely crucial when it comes to some of this, where we're going here. So my empathetic reaction it can often be made into a story, to my story, through my thinking. And as I'm going to go on to discuss, compassion can help us see that what's my story and what is your story, and then help me to stay present with the other. So this idea of thought creates reality, of holding heart-centered space, so holding a space where people feel safe, and holding that, and I talked about this idea of creating conditions earlier. So we're creating conditions for people, and that's a heart-centered caring space. That it's reflective, it's responsive, and it's relational. That the practice is about in the moment awareness and insight. So the story that I come up with right now may be different from the story that I had earlier, and to always be aware that we really the now time is the closest we're going to get to anything real. that values and integrity are sitting behind our practice. So there's a real strong sense of wanting to be our practice to be in integrity with our values. And like I said, that dissonance can sometimes get in the way. So really kind of working towards understanding that, and that, yeah, we have clear values underpinning what we're doing. And obviously this is about empathy and compassion and about care. So just coming back. Something happened then, hopefully. Can you tell me, can you hear me okay? Just told me my audio was removed, so let me know if you can't hear me. Okay. So yeah, so there are different, so then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, just going back to that now time, is the idea of presence. And again, this is your kind of superpower, and of which some of you will be more confident with than others. And so I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that there are different degrees of presence, and we're all working to increasing our presence with those that we're working with. So I'm also on that journey as well. And it's really interesting that we're on Facebook Live, and I'm just wondering, where does presence sit here? Are we able to be in presence with one another through this medium? And I think that might have been sitting behind why I want to meet you on Zoom as well, because I want to have a conversation with you. But I still, yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Can we be in presence here together? So as I said, there's degrees. So this idea of being with what is, so whatever is happening in the now time, being able to be present and stay present with that without trying to control it. And that involves deep listening and the ability to stay in the now. So just bearing in mind that any thought that we have or any story that we create is going to take us away from the now. So whenever, even when we're thinking about what to do next, or we've got hooked into a story or an emotional reaction to something, that will be taking us away from what is happening right now in this moment. And if our intention in this space is to connect, is to really connect true, as fully as possible, then that's going to take us away from the present moment. So when we're deeply listening, we're listening beyond words. We're listening to what people say, but we're also listening to, there's the sensing capacity is coming into play as well. So when we listen beyond words, we can listen beyond the story. We can listen even beyond the story that someone is telling you, and we can look at what else we can see in the telling of that story. And importantly, we can see the person in front of us as whole. Now, someone might be telling you a story that shows a side to them, and that's why it's really important that we've always got the sense of the whole in view as well. Thank you, Melissa. You can hear me. Great. So yes, it's really seeing that person as whole and to be present with that. Otherwise, we get caught up in fixing and thinking that we know what to do. So when we start to, so the process of moving towards compassion is about feeling driven, feeling the urge to help someone. That can lead us towards wanting to fix and to want to want to kind of solve a problem. But if we're staying in the now and we're looking at the whole, then we're in inquiry. We're conscious of what's happening, so we can kind of hold back that aspect of us, because that emotional drive to help is a very strong urge. It's there in our biology. So when we're thinking about someone being whole, we're aware that they also, as we do, have their own wisdom, and they have their own wisdom to know what to do. So all we're doing is we're creating a space for that wisdom to come through. So I thought it would be useful to sort of think about when we have a feeling or a response to something, to think about it in terms of a continuum which goes towards or away. And I've been talking to you a lot about kind of our fear response. And so when we have, I tried to write it down, but I don't think it's very clear. So I'll just put it there. Yeah, so we have this empathetic reaction, and those little round dots are mirror neurons flowing across, and we have that empathetic reaction. I'm feeling you, you're feeling me, we're in presence together. And then my response will depend whether I move away or move towards. So if I go, help, that could be me. So I over-identify so much with someone's story that it's become my story, and it is my story, it's not theirs. That's frightening, because I start to go into a fear response. And so if I start to have that help, it could be me response, I'm potentially starting to move away, or maybe even just go into overwhelm, which is another form of moving away. And then the other end of that would be glad it's not me having that experience. So we can see how fear kind of sits in that. But if the other way of moving towards is moving towards compassion. So I am feeling what I am feeling, because I'm a feeling person, and I'm feeling on lots of levels what's going on for you, and I'm here with you now, not in that story. I'm here with you now, right now, in that feeling, and I'm going to be there with you in that feeling, because I want to help, and I'll go on to the challenge of that in a moment. And so that moving into that kind of caregiving role is a kind of taking us more to a compassionate response. So I hope that's making sense. So I'm just thinking, I know that you will have had these different experiences yourself, so I'm not teaching you something new. And in some ways, what I'm trying to do is draw attention to what has already probably happened in your life, so that you can tune into your own previous responses and become conscious of them. So yeah, so when we move towards the compassionate, when we move towards, that activates another part of our nervous system, which is called the tend and befriend aspect. And it's that kind of bear looking after its baby cub thing. And that instinct it's an instinct towards social connectedness. And that's there in our biology as well. And that social care giving system releases oxytocin, and then activates the reward system in our brain, and dopamine, and then we get attunement and serotonin. So there's a good feeling that comes from that compassionate connection with another, which is why connection is so important. And I think it's really just good to know that this is what's going on in our amazing system, and why that might give us these urges of why something feels good to help. So my next point that I want to make is about being critical / being conscious. And in applied theatre, which is where I've kind of come from, we learned that we need to be critical of our human tendencies to want to help others, and be aware of the saviour complex, and the sort of problem of that can lead to sacrificial behaviour, and also reproduce complex power relations and superiority, and be a form of control, all of those things. And I just want to kind of hold that. So that's a critique. And so wanting to fix people, and that urge, that biological urge, is something that we as coaches and facilitators need to be aware of. However, I'm feeling concerned that engaging in a critique can lead to suppression, and further fear. So if we're picking that up, it's like, I mustn't feel like I want to help someone. So what I'm trying to say is that the tendency to be a saviour might be a shadow side to human nature, and the feel-good thing helps us understand that. And it may be more prevalent in the helping professions. But the key is to be conscious of the tendencies, to have a space through supervision, through reflective practice, where we can attend to the responses that we're having, and to feel safe to explore them, but not to silence them or to stop them. Because otherwise I feel that just becomes the criticalness becomes another away strategy. It's another way of dealing with the fear of our human impulse to support and help others. I really hope this is making sense. So I'm really, in the membership, really supporting people to own up own up to what it is that they want to be doing, what their purpose, what they feel their purpose is, what they want to bring into the world. And I feel that many practitioners feel that they're not able to lean into that fully because they're worried about the kind of criticalness of it. And I think that we need to be using critique as a way of us being conscious, but not to silence or to shut down or to put into the shadows, because that's just yet another fear response. So it's about so coming back to this, I want you to know that you are okay, that your heart-centered instinct is your strength, and it will deepen your work with other people, and whilst also moving you out of survival mode. So that tend and befriend impulse is a settling of the nervous system, and will bring you into the rest and repair aspect, which is away from the fight, flight, freeze. So so I really want you to kind of lean into that, really, and so that, because it will deepen your capacity for presence, it will give you permission to use that sensing capacity that you have as a facilitator to offer that into the work that you do with others, to help you to understand more deeply what is going on for others. And as a facilitator, that's the role that we're in, a lot of us. It's about, when it's appropriate, finding spaces to reflect back what you're sensing and seeing, not because but because you're inquiring and you're offering it into a space, and you're checking it out. You're saying, does this make sense to you? Is this your understanding? And you're checking that out, and you're allowing other people to respond to that. But in order for that to happen, we have to be conscious of what is our story and what we are sensing from others. And for me, that was quite a big one, because I was holding a lot of insecure thinking for a lot of the work that I used to do. So that would take me into my story. But then there are other times when I'm sensing something, I'm aware of a feeling that's coming up for me, and I'm realizing now as I'm growing that that's not necessarily, it's something that I'm also sensing from who I'm working with. So that becomes really important information for me to note, or to even share back with the person I'm working with. Being able to check that out, and having spaces where you can check that out with other people and other practitioners, to be able to sit with discomfort and uncomfortable feelings, and to know that you can't be damaged by a feeling, that you are okay. Something can feel difficult, but it is okay. And to keep inquiring, whose story is this? Is this my story? Whose story is it? See the whole person. Help them because when you see the whole person, you're helping them to see themselves as whole as well. And that's absolutely crucial. And then the people you're working with, can see beyond their story as well. And I think, I think that's probably all I've got to say really on that matter. I hope it's kind of provoked you to have some thoughts about this. I guess so. What the kind of task for the day then is to really get you to tune in for yourself, with the difference between that continuum from empathy, compassion, the towards away, or the other end, which is the fear response. And so I'm inviting you to do that by calling upon a couple of moments. It might even be the same moment where you felt emotion. So this might be very normal, where you have an emotional reaction to something, you feel a sense of distress, and then it becomes compassion. Or it might be that you've had two different examples. But if you can start to tune into and start to feel the difference, then you're becoming more conscious of what's going on for you. And so I'm going to hop on Zoom now, and if you're around and you want to chat with me, and ask me some questions, or just have a conversation, then I would love to see you. And tomorrow on day 4, we're going to be looking at what happens when we argue with reality. So and how that can get in the way of presence and connection. So it's been lovely to see you, and I hope that actually what I'm going to do right now, the second. Oh, I can't post comments. Isn't that weird? Okay, as soon as I've come off here, I will come into the chat underneath this video, and I will post the Zoom link, and I will be there waiting for you, and we'll have a chat. Okay, take care. Lovely Well, I haven't seen you yet, but lovely to be here.